all bodies have the sex hormones in different proportions. None of us know what our proportion was prior to menopause because we didn't have baseline testing done. It's not even realistic to think about having baseline testing done for every person on the planet. Like, it's an impossibility. So we don't know what our B4 was anyway. So that's one of the reasons I use MHT, menopausal hormone therapy, as a term instead of HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy. We aren't replacing our hormones. We're doing something new. We're optimizing our hormones. We're doing what we can to make our bodies work in the ways that we want them to.
Because it's hard to be a person with a body these days when bonkers TikTok diets are all the rage. And why are the seats so damn small on the airplane? Because it's hard to be a person with a body these days.
You're listening to Burnt Toast. I'm Corinne Fay. Today, my conversation is with Lasara Firefox Allen. Lasara is a trans and genderqueer author, educator, menopause doula, and coach, and the founder and CEO of Genderqueer Futures. Lasara wrote Genderqueer Menopause and the Forthcoming Magical Menopause and is the creator of the Gender-Affirming Menopause Care Certification course, which trains healthcare providers and allied professionals in inclusive, affirming, dysphoria-aware menopause care. Their work integrates clinical education, lived experience, somatic practice, and social justice frameworks to support gender-expansive people through hormonal transitions. Lasara speaks nationally at conferences including GLMA, UCSF Transgender Health Summit, and Creating Change, and is a leading voice in the emerging field of gender-affirming menopause care. Lasara joined me to chat about their new book, Genderqueer Menopause, Navigating Menopause for Trans, Gender Nonconforming, Gender Fluid, and Other Queer-Bodied Folks. We're going to get into thinking about hormones outside the gender binary, the difference between performing and living sexual desire, and self-advocacy in medical settings, plus so much more. It's a great conversation. And after our interview, paid subscribers can stick around for Indulgence Gospel, where Virginia, Kim, and I will be chatting a little bit more about midlife and perimenopause in our own lives. If you're not a paid subscriber, it's just $5 to join. Click the link in your episode description or go to burnttoastpodcast.com. Here's Lasara. So, Lasara, your new book, Genderqueer Menopause, Navigating Menopause for Trans, Gender Nonconforming, Gender Fluid, and Other Queer-Bodied Folks is out now. Can you give Burnt Toast listeners a brief summary of what the book is about and how it came to be?
Absolutely. So it's the first of its kind menopause resource for folks who do not identify as cis. So anybody who's trans, gender expansive, gender queer, gender fluid, whatever the identity might be. And it came to be because I'm a genderqueer person. And when I was in menopause, I went into perimenopause in, probably like 2012, 2013, but I didn't realize it really until 2016. And there were no resources for me. I'm a gap closer. That's what I do. I was doing the work for myself anyway. So I figured there are more folks who need it than we even know of. And that has proven to be true. Like, the sales are going great.
Oh, that's awesome. Menopause and perimenopause have been really popular topics on the Burnt Toast podcast universe. So really excited to have a slightly different perspective.
It makes sense that it would be popular. Yeah. We're all in it.
Yeah. I'm 40. Virginia is 45 and Kim is 50. So I feel like we're bridging the spectrum.
Exactly. One of the interesting and shocking things is so few of us know how early perimenopause can start. And also so few of us know what any of the early symptoms are.
Yeah. I feel like I'm constantly tracking stuff is this something?
Right.
One thing I really appreciated about your book was I loved the idea that menopause could be gender affirming or even just a relief for people who have dysphoria around menstruation. And I would just love for you to talk about what gets missed when menopause is discussed only as a negative or unwanted life stage.
Yeah, well, let's start with the concept of gender euphoria. Gender euphoria is the flip side of gender dysphoria. So gender dysphoria is when you just don't feel right in your body. And gender euphoria is when you're feeling affirmed in your gender through either a physical sensation or a perception or whatever it might be. Being a genderqueer person, when I got through perimenopause, which was absolute hell for me, honestly. When I finally got through perimenopause and into the menopause transition and then postmenopause, it was like a revelation. In the first place, I was amazed that I all of a sudden didn't feel like my system was being hijacked, which is what it felt like for decades, right? And so being able to feel like I had bodily sovereignty for the first time, really, in a lot of ways since menarche, since onset of menses. In other ways, because it had gotten so extreme during perimenopause for me, my PMDD was amplified. When I was writing Genderqueer Menopause, I found out about another term, which is PME, which is premenstrual exacerbation syndrome.
Oh.
And that is actually a different thing than PMS or PMDD. It's where when one has underlying mental health conditions that we're already tracking and treating, and then PMS or the premenstrual cycle can actually cause an exacerbation of those underlying symptoms. So say you're diagnosed with bipolar disorder, ADHD, CPTSD, whatever it might be, you are experiencing breakthrough symptoms like that your treatments aren't working during that time period is how it shows up for many of us. So where PMS is like you feel irritated and PMDD is like you feel really terrible and want to yell at people, PME is like you feel suicidal. Like if that's an underlying symptom that you already experience. Content note, trigger warning. I'm going to talk about suicide for a moment because it's an important thing to talk about in the menopause conversation.
Yeah.
Recently, I did find out, and it's very understudied, surprise, surprise, but there's a time link between the highest rates of suicide for AFAB folks, people assigned female at birth, and the menopause transition.
Wow.
It has not been studied for a causal link.
Yeah.
But deductively, we can say the vast majority, like by 7% or something,
Wow.
of suicides that happen, completion and suicidal ideation
Wow.
for people assigned female at birth is during that window of like 43 to 56 or something.
Wow.
So it's like a template, which is shocking that it hasn't, unfortunately not shocking. Irritating as all get out that it hasn't been studied, right?
Yeah.
But that is something to know. And so in both Genderqueer Menopause and also I just finished writing my next book, which is called Magical Menopause. And that's coming out from Llewellyn
I love the
next
name.
year. Thank you. It's about menopause as a physically occurring initiation cycle, kind of parallel to menarche, right?
Yeah.
So in that book and this book, I talk about that link between suicidality and that age range because it is so very, very important for us to be aware.
Yeah.
And also, of course, if you're experiencing suicidal ideation, take it seriously, get support, reach out for the help that you need.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes so much sense to me, like not to discount the like physical hormonal part of that, but also just the cultural conversation where everyone's kind of like dreading this thing. And like, I feel like there's so much just in the culture about how women or AFAB people after they go through that are basically like worthless. So like,
right.
Yeah, how could you not be feeling?
Right. And I think that all of that is linked. I think also that the exacerbation of mental health disorders or even late diagnosis for so many of us, because all of our lives we've been masking.
Yeah.
AFAB folks, as people socialized female, we have different masking skills than people who were born male or designated male at birth. And we are underdiagnosed. And then all of a sudden in perimenopause and menopause, postmenopause, we're being diagnosed. I was diagnosed with ADHD last year, right?
Oh, wow.
In my 50s.
Congrats.
So, thank you. I know it was a revelation. It was a moment of all of a sudden things making sense that hadn't ever really made sense before. So a lot of us are having that experience. And to bring it back to the question about the positives, I think when we break through all of that, I want to give a flip side to this awareness of like our own sort of lack of ability to mask anymore, for example. That can be seen as a negative, but also it can be seen as a positive. Like all of a sudden we are in this place of like, I'm not taking your needs before my own. I'm not taking your comfort before my own. I'm not prioritizing your sense of how this moment should go over how I think it should go or needs to go.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, again, those who were socialized female, especially, but anyone who's AFAB, I think the tendency to take care of other people, outranking our own need to take care of ourselves, is culturally ingrained.
Totally.
There are elements of it that, whether they started this way or not, are genetically coded for that, even as far as like estrogen plus oxytocin versus estrogen plus cortisol, like just the different chemical combinations that happen under stress for different bodies tend our biology in one direction or another. So one of the things that I like to bring up too is the concept of the gray divorce, which is like divorce in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. And people are calling estrogen the BS buffer in the context of, of the gray divorce, because something like 70% of gray divorces are initiated by AFAB folks.
Gray divorce refers to like gray hair?
Yes,
okay,
correct.
Okay.
So like 40, 50, it's just a quaint term for divorced 40s and up, you know?
Yeah.
And so a lot of things go into that, obviously, like people who stay together for the kids are grown and out of the house. They feel more freedom to do that. But there's also that component, like with so many, and I don't know if it's 70%, I can't pull the number out of my hat, but it is a large percentage of those divorces are being asked for, requested, initiated by AFAB folks. And the link to a dip in estrogen depletion, and then all of a sudden the estrogen oxytocin link isn't there anymore, and we are done. We're just done.
That is fascinating. Yeah, that's all like new information to me, but it makes so much sense just based on like what I see happening around me.
It's wild. It's wild. And I'm not essentialist at all, obviously, but I do think that there are interesting patterns to be looked at in the physiobiology, right, of different life stages and different bodies. There's a lot to be looked at there. Definitely nothing conclusive out there at this point. We don't have enough information to know for sure how it all works, but the tendency toward tend and befriend rather than fight or flight is one of those areas that's being looked at.
And another thing you kind of touch on in your book is that hormones have no gender. Like people have all kinds of hormones and all kinds of different levels. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Definitely. So that's a tagline I actually borrowed from somebody. Dr. Kasperson says hormones have no gender. A lot of us say hormones have no gender, but I want to credit Dr. Kasperson because I think that she was the first one I heard say it. I've adopted it because it is true and it's essential for people to understand. And in the context of gender affirming menopause care, which is what I specialize in, it is essential for people to understand that hormones have no gender. So all bodies have the sex hormones in different proportions. None of us know what our proportion was prior to menopause because we didn't have baseline testing done. It's not even realistic to think about having baseline testing done for every person on the planet. Like it's an impossibility. So we don't know what our B4 was anyway. So that's one of the reasons I use MHT, menopausal hormone therapy, as a term instead of HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy.
Right.
We aren't replacing our hormones. We're doing something new. We're optimizing our hormones. We're doing what we can to make our bodies work in the ways that we want them to. My hope, like my big dream in all of this, is that as we get to the point where we can accept less binarist attitudes around hormones, that we can get more creative about how we optimize those hormones, about how we use them creatively for the outcomes that we want. So we can look at goal of menopausal treatment as being how our body feels best, being how our body works best, and also making sure that we're not compromising ourselves as far as long-term health outcomes go.
Yeah, I think that's a really liberating perspective to have. And I wish more doctors shared that.
Thankfully, there are a number of doctors coming around. I do offer a training for medical providers
Cool.
and coaches and et cetera. So when I was writing Genderqueer Menopause, and I know we'll talk about the advocacy chapter a little bit later, but when I was writing the advocacy chapter, I found myself getting very angry that I had to arm my community against the medical establishment. I've been doing this for years, but book writing is an initiatory process for me. Every time I write a book, I'm like, oh, this is changing me on a fundamental level. And this is one of the areas I just felt the anger boiling up. And I was like, I need to impact change upstream.
Yeah.
And so I developed a gender affirming menopause care certification course for providers.
Oh, wow.
And I had 7 folks in the last cohort, and
Wow.
half of them were doctors or prescribing medical professionals. And so there are folks who are paying attention, who are starting to create that sort of sea change that we need around how menopause treatment is offered. Gender affirming care is for everyone. That's also something that I want to say. Gender affirming care is literally for every person. An interesting thing is that, like, sort of your cis straight average person, average, I say air quotes, is going to access gender affirming care more easily than a trans person or a queer person.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate and terrible. And what that says is that gender affirming care is totally acceptable when it's affirming the gender that you were born as or assigned as at birth. But once you are wanting to find your comfort in your body on your own terms, it becomes problematic.
We were talking about this with the looks maxing stuff recently.
What a wild trend.
I know, wild. You mentioned self-advocacy. This is a subject that I really love, and we're a body liberation podcast, and I feel like this is familiar to so many people who are fat, who have chronic illness. You write, self-advocacy can be vulnerable, scary, and intimidating. Many folks have image-related concerns about self-advocacy, and most of us would rather appear to be imminently capable than present with the vulnerability of our needs. We'd rather be perceived as being as perfect as possible. Can you talk a bit about self-advocacy?
Absolutely. And I want to start with just the quote that you offered, which is to say, we want to be perceived as perfect because that's safer.
Yeah.
It's safer.
Yeah.
When we go in with complex needs, I have complex medical needs, and that's where my advocacy protocols came from, is my own need to find ways to get the care that I needed and desired. It's challenging and dangerous to go in vulnerable without a plan. So what I offer is a plan so that you can carry your vulnerability into the room, but you're doing it in a container that allows you to have strength and presence and to solicit what I term a collaborative relationship with your medical provider.
Yeah.
Because for me, like I said, I just turned 55. So at this point, I know very clearly I'm the expert on my body. I'm the expert on my disorders and diagnoses. I'm the expert on my areas of strength. I'm the expert on what treatment plans I'll comply with and what I will not comply with.
Yeah.
I'm the expert on what I'm open to and what I'm not open to. And for me, I'm going to bring that to the medical professional up front.
Yeah.
I have a letter writing practice in that chapter where I offer the protocol of writing a letter to your new medical provider and offering them basic framework about what you are open to, what you aren't open to, what your current treatment plan is, how long you've been adherent to it, what's working, what's not, right? Very short, a page to a page and a half tops. And what I do is I write that letter out when I'm going to be meeting with a new doctor, a new medical professional. I've done it with therapists, like all kinds of different care providers. I write the letter out. I submit it to my chart. I drop it in an email. I do all the things. If it's going to be in person, I'll walk in and hand it to the front desk in physical form.
Yeah.
And say, please put this in my file and make sure that the medical provider gets it. That said, most of them won't have read it by the time that the appointment happens. I bring another physical copy in my hand.
Yeah.
And so if it's in person, and if it's not, I figure out a different way to do it. But I will bring a physical copy to an in-person, and I do prefer in-person appointments, so I'm weird that way. But I will bring a physical copy and I'll say, have you had a chance to read my letter? No. before we engage, can you please take a few minutes and read over it?
Yeah.
And if they say, I don't have time, that's a no for me anyway.
Yeah.
I already know they're not going to be collaborative.
Yeah.
And I want a relationship with a provider that is based on basic human decency and compassion and equal footing.
I love that. I think it's really helpful to have like a framework like the letter writing exercise, just because it's really hard to know where to start sometimes.
Well, and then there are two other exercises that I like to just mention along with that, which is the letter writing to kick it off. And then when you go to an appointment with any medical provider, any care provider, I always do a list in my notes app on my phone of the topics that I need to get answered that day.
That's smart.
Because I forget when I walk into the room. I'm like, I get 3 of them and I forget the other 4, you know.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's too much stress. And they're going fast and you're going fast and, you know, things get skimmed over. And I'll say in the session, okay, thank you. Now give me a minute while I read through my list and make sure I got everything.
Yeah.
My doctors are used to it. They give me the minute and I look, and often there's something that I'm like, oh yeah, this thing. And they're gracious about it because we do have that relationship that's collaborative. And then the third thing is, if you feel like your relationship with your medical provider is not as collaborative as you would like, if you feel like maybe you're being gaslit or maybe you're not being taken seriously. I had a medical provider once who was just treating me like absolute dirt. And my spouse was like, what is going on with this? And I was like, you need to come to the next appointment. And he did. And the whole time she talked to him. And we left the appointment. He was like, oh, wow. Okay. You know, she disrespected me so hardcore that she talked to him the whole appointment instead. So bring someone to have a reality check, bring someone to have an advocate, bring someone to just be there as a presence of support, bring someone you trust, have them in the room with you. Again, if your medical provider won't allow that, they probably aren't the right fit.
That's a good perspective. Well, not to do a hard pivot, but I feel like the hottest menopause, perimenopause topic is sex, and just like how the importance of that can shift. And I'd love if you could just talk a bit more about that.
Definitely. I come from a background of being a sex educator for many, many years. And my personal story around menopause is interesting because in perimenopause, my sex drive was like through the roof and I was obsessed. And then I had a grief experience during late peri, a very extreme grief experience. Then menopause set in and all of a sudden my sex drive was like through the floor, was gone, absolutely gone. As a sex educator, it was very shocking for me all of a sudden to have no sex drive. And it was an ego hit. My ego felt very impacted. My sense of identity and sense of self felt very impacted. On the other hand, physically and psychologically, I was like, I could not give a shit. I did not care at all, honestly. The people I was in relationships with didn't feel quite the same way, but they dealt with it, you know, over time. And for about 1.5 years, I did not have it in me to prioritize sexuality as something that felt like it needed my attention or needed fixing.
Yeah.
For a while, I was like, does this need fixing?
Yeah.
So that's what I bring to the book. That's what I bring to my practice now around sex education and menopause. The question of, does it need fixing? A lack of desire doesn't mean a disorder. A lack of desire coupled with distress about the lack of desire equals a disorder.
Yeah.
But both of those criteria need to be met in order to be diagnosed with HSDD, which is hypoactive sexual desire disorder. So if you just have a lack of desire and it's not causing you distress, it's not a disorder. And that is up to you to decide how to contextualize that in your life. I think we put so much pressure on being sexually available that actually to have our sexual reality shift in that way can actually be its own liberating force.
I love that perspective.
Right? Because when have we ever paused long enough to say, is this about me or is this about who I'm fucking?
Yeah.
How often do we pause and say, am I performing sexual desire right now? Or am I living in it? Am I experiencing it? So I think that that's a question worth asking throughout our lives. And if we
Yeah.
haven't gotten to the point of asking it by the time we're in menopause, the time is now. And also another thing that I like to tie in, the secondary message that I have for folks in perimenopause or menopause is that there are a lot of sexual impacts that can happen that also are physiological impacts that may need your attention.
Yeah.
So when we can contextualize our bodies and our sexuality as for us, all of a sudden taking care of our genital anatomy gains a new relevance.
Yeah.
It's not about what we can give. It's not about what we can offer. It's not about whether we want sex, whether we want kids, whether we want our body to be productive in one way or another. It's about this is my body and I get to take care of it for my own health and well-being.
Yeah. I think that's a good framing. You have a great Instagram graphic about how most menopause framework assumes cis patients as the default. What is something common you see cis folks get wrong? Is there something cis women in particular could do to include non-binary, trans, and genderqueer people in the menopause conversation?
That's a great question. One of the things that I love to point out about perimenopause, menopause, the menopause experience for trans and gender expansive people is that for us, menopause doesn't necessarily look like it does for cis folks. Gender affirming hormone therapy and gender affirming surgical interventions can cause a completely different trajectory with menopause. If we have a gender affirming surgery and have our uterus removed and have both ovaries taken out, we experience menopause overnight, or literally
Right.
like 1 hour we're premenopausal and the next hour we're postmenopausal. That can be very intense and jarring. And honestly, I don't think the medical establishment is dealing with it very well yet. I think there needs to be a better standard around offering a menopause questionnaire before doing gender affirming hysterectomies. I think there needs to be a lot more education on what menopause and early menopause specifically, what the impacts can be, and how to avoid negative outcomes.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a standardized protocol to the point that makes me feel eminently comfortable.
Yeah.
That said, I fully support everyone in getting the surgeries that they need. I just hope that we can get to the point where like informed consent is truly informed.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Like, don't assume that just because someone is 30 that they're not postmenopausal.
That's a great point. If someone finds your book and sees themselves in it, where can they go for other resources?
Well, there are not a lot of resources for folks like us. I do offer a whole bunch of resources, so people can definitely go to my link tree, which is Lasara Firefox Allen. I'm Lasara Firefox Allen everywhere.
Okay.
But in addition to that, queermenopause.org by Tanya Glide is an amazing resource. They keep up very, very well with the contemporary news on what's happening in queer and gender affirming menopause. They've promoted my products and my courses, and they have just a boatload of other resources for queer and gender expansive folks. What Fresh Hell Is This by Heather Corinne is an inclusive resource. It's not inclusive to the extent that genderqueer menopause is. It was written for a wider audience.
Yeah.
It's not written for genderqueer folks. It's written for everybody, and genderqueer folks are included, which is great. And Heather's work is great. I believe that Bloody Hell, the anthology that just came out recently, has gender affirming material in it, but probably not exclusively. So those are the resources I know of. There are a few folks up and coming in the gender affirming menopause space. My providers are coming out with material. One of the providers that I trained recently has a neurodivergent menopause handbook coming out. I think it just came out last week, actually, which is phenomenal. And it's fully affirming. So the folks I've trained are definitely bringing new materials to the community.
That's so good to hear. Another thing I loved in your book was the idea of having like an aging icon, people we can look up to as we age. I'd love to know about one of yours.
I'm going to say two of mine. One is a group of people, which is the Advanced Style people, Ari Cohen's Advanced Style
Oh my
folks.
gosh, love them.
All of them. I love them. They're all dapper and delightful and so brilliant and so wise. I really do adore the whole ethos there. And then personally, my older sister, Trent, has 9.5 years on me and is out there kicking ass. So she's phenomenal. And when I think about how I want to age, I look at what she has done and what she continues to do to stay healthy and vibrant and alive and engaged with the world. It's really inspiring to have someone who I'm close to, who I can look up to and say, that looks good.
That's really sweet. I love that. One thing that I think is really unique about genderqueer menopause is that it includes a lot of quotes from like real genderqueer humans throughout. I was just curious if you could talk a bit about why it was important to include those other voices in your book.
Absolutely. There are a few reasons. One is I think storytelling is so important. Having firsthand accounts and things that we can say, oh, I'm not alone in this. There are others who are experiencing this alongside with me. And then the other thing is there's so little research for our community. So the anecdotal information is very, very valuable.
Yeah.
And those interviews are not the only anecdotal information that I relied on in the book. Some of the material in the book has not been studied at all. There's no research on it. So what is presented in the book is purely anecdotal. And the resources are from people I know personally who've been through the things, myself, my community, and deep, deep in the subreddits where it's only community members who are in there talking about perimenopause as FTEM folks. Those resources were the only places that I could find mention about things like, for example, what I'm calling mini pause, which is when one has a hysterectomy and a unilateral oophorectomy and has one ovary remaining.
Wow.
There's a period of time where that one ovary is deciding, am I going to make it or not? And the blood supply is compromised. The hormonal levels are compromised. It's not up to creating the hormonal levels of the whole 2 ovary system and uterus. It's having to take on a whole new workload, and your body needs to reach homeostasis. And so as that one ovary gets used to doing the job of 2 ovaries and again, decides whether it's going to take the job at all, because sometimes they just don't, that period of anywhere from weeks to months, and I've seen it be up to 10 months,
wow,
is like a mini menopause.
Wow.
And the symptoms are identical.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. Any queer media recommendations you have?
Definitely Planet Sex.
Oh, yeah. Cara Delevingne. Yeah.
Delevingne.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say their last name. So that was phenomenal.
I love that.
I also love queer romances. Queer romances are harder to find, but they do exist and they're delightful.
Yeah. Do you want to shout out any that you've loved recently?
I think the one that I read most recently was called When Casey Met Cassidy or something like that. It's a delightful sort of traditional style romance, but it stars, queer folks. Also, the Christmas Notch series, which is very, very, very saucy.
Yeah.
Very saucy. What do they say? The 4-pepper variety is queer. It's not exclusively queer, but it has queerness in its pantheon. Yeah. So it's, in its world. It's pretty great.
I love that. I also noticed that you're tagged on Instagram in something called Menopause Cabaret, and I want to know everything about that.
Yeah, that was a delight to co-produce. I co-produced that with a couple other sex-positive folks in the Bay Area. And it was, a book event. That's how it came about.
Cool.
Like, it was one of my book release parties. And I have a history of throwing like sex positive parties as book releases for all of my previous books. I've had something along those lines. I wanted to continue the tradition. And so I'm part of a club here in the Bay Area. And I reached out to some folks in that community and said, hey, what if we did this? And they were like, yes, let's do this. And so it was delightful. It was a cabaret, but it was also an age positive sex party.
Wow.
And so it was like so great because even in the sex positive community, ageism is a thing.
Absolutely.
And so being in a sex positive environment and a sexy environment, where folks of all ages above 21 were there, and could engage. And we all knew that it was a sex positive environment. So we didn't have to get weird about it. Anybody there was like into the vibe. And it was really affirming and really delightful and really sweet. And the performances were amazing and scandalous and hilarious. It was just a really generative, sweet, comfortable, like comforting space. We'll do another one at some point.
That's awesome. I love for people to hear about stuff like that because I'm like, maybe someone else will be inspired to throw something similar in their community.
Yeah. Yeah. So we called it Hot Flash.
Oh, such a good name.
And we'll be doing a Hot Flash party again here in the Bay. So people should look for it on my Instagram.
I love that. All right. We end every episode with a segment called Butter, which is our recommendation segment, and would love for you to tell us something that you've been loving lately. Can be anything.
Amazing. So I am going to echo what I said earlier about queer romances, but I'm going to expand it and just say the romance genre in general, but specifically audiobooks of the romance genre. It is like delightful. I grew up being read to anyway, so I love being read to, and we read aloud in my family. So I love audiobooks. Like audiobooks feel like home to me. I love reading too. Absolutely love reading off the page, but there's something different about just receiving. And so I love that. I love the romance genre, which as a writer was very judgmental about until just a few years ago. And then in like 2023, maybe, or 2024, maybe, I got COVID really, really badly and could do nothing. And that's when I read my first Christmas Notch book. I was like laying in bed. Somebody had given me this book and I was like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing. It like made me feel better. I could ignore the fact that I was perishing. It was so great. And then I ended up like doing a ton of research around the craft of romance. And it's a very articulated craft.
Yeah.
I ended up writing a romance too, but it's not published yet. So
cool.
Crossing fingers, we'll see. You know, one day my book will be one of the queer romances out there.
Amazing. I love that. Does it feature older folks?
The first one I wrote is an emerging adult category. So they're, you know, just getting started on life sort of vibe. And it's a friends to lovers arc and triad.
Oh, cute. I love that.
Yeah, it's very cute. It is cute. I hope I get back to it someday. And then I did start the next book in the series, and that was going to feature an advanced age couple. So.
Oh, cool. Well, my butter this week was going to be Hacks. I don't know if you've watched that. I just watched the finale.
I haven't watched season 2 yet.
Okay. No spoilers. But I thought the finale of the whole show is like amazing. I really cried. It's a great show for some like aging icons. And yes, also some queerness. So
yes,
definitely want to recommend that. To wrap up, will you tell us where folks can find you and how we can support your work?
Definitely. So you can find Genderqueer Menopause at pretty much any bookstore. If they don't carry it, ask them to carry it. It will do me good and it'll do our community good and it will do you good as well. So ask your bookstore to carry it. Definitely, if you can, buy from a local indie. They need your money more than anyone else does. And then aside from that, my Linktree is the best place to find me. I'm constantly updating it. So all of my stuff that I'm offering at any given moment should be reflected on there. And that's, again, Lasara Firefox Allen. My Instagram, I keep up to pretty well. And again, that's Lasara Firefox Allen. You can also find my media under Genderqueer Menopause, but I don't keep those as active. So just follow my primaries.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a delight. Thank you so much.
Okay, next up we have Indulgence Gospel, our new bonus segment for paid subscribers. This is where we get a little more unfiltered. You're going to get hot takes, you're going to get personal updates, it's a whole mix. Today, Virginia, Kim, and I are going to chat more about midlife and perimenopause. Free list, you won't want to miss this. Click the link in your episode description or go to burnttoastpodcast.com to join us. You've been listening to Burnt Toast. If you'd like to support the show, follow us for free in your podcast player. And if you have a second, please leave a little note about why you love Burnt Toast. Your reviews really help new listeners find conversations like these.
The Burnt Toast podcast is hosted by Virginia Soulsmith and Corinne Fay. You can follow me on Instagram and Threads at _Soulsmith. Follow Corinne on Instagram at SelfieFay and on Patreon at Big Undies.
This podcast is produced by Kim Baldwin. You can follow Kim at The Blonde Mule on all platforms and subscribe to her newsletter at theblondemule.com. The Burnt Toast logo is by Deanna Lowe. Our theme music is by Faraday.
Our video editor is Elizabeth Ayiku, who also runs the Me Little Me Foundation, a virtual food pantry supporting multiply marginalized folks recovering from eating disorders. Learn more and donate at melittleme.foundation.org. And Tommy Heron is our audio engineer. Thanks for listening and for supporting anti-diet, body liberation journalism.